Hi, welcome to the Woods Fans. It's Melissa. The lake house that we bought this past year and I've been working on did not come without problems. We ended up finding some mold on the inside, right on this wall, where there was a bunch of earth that came up against the siding and there was a lot of drainage issues with the water. You can see that there was a drain tile pipe put there. There's no gutters up on the roof line, and so we're going to try and fix this. The first thing to do was to excavate almost 2 yards of earth out of this area. We raked off the rock and then hauled away a bunch of soil. And this is going to make sure that the grading of the earth slopes away from the house, and also that it doesn't come up any higher than the foundation. It doesn't come in contact with the wood siding like it is now. The wood siding was so rotted away when we excavated this out. And so I'm just trying to clear an area where I can actually patch what's rotted. We had mold on the inside of the house, like I mentioned, and a mold remediation company came and took care of it for us. They took out all the moldy material, stripped the drywall, took out the insulation, the carpet, etc. So now I have to fix the rotted material on the outside of the house, and then we'll be able to put it all back together and the house will be pretty safe. So the first thing to do was to remove the siding. And this siding is cedar. It's several decades old. And if you know about cedar siding, it cracks super easily. It was quite brittle. I'm using a small pry bar and a hammer to get underneath the siding and pry up the nails that hold it in. This bottom piece was definitely not salvageable, and even the next row up, the piece of siding was in pretty bad shape because the earth had caused the wood to rot so much. And here's actually a close-up of some of the rot. You can also see a piece of lumber that we had added from the inside to cover up the holes that were in the sheathing, where you could see right through the wall out to the outside in a few areas. So I feel like this was a really bad situation where the elements were getting in, and we have to redo it so that we can keep the water out. Now I pulled off several more layers of the siding, and this is partially because I thought if I went 4 feet up I might find a seam in the sheathing where I could easily replace a piece. I also pulled off this much because I wanted to see if rot continued down the wall, like if there was like a water leak coming from the roof. But I didn't find any indication of that, and so I think that the water issue is really at the ground level. Underneath the siding was this old tar paper, and I just got rid of that and folded it up. I'm going to be using something better for the vapor barrier. And then below that was like this sticky tar stuff that looked like a row of shingles, like what you'd put on a roof. I don't really know why that was there, but I don't think it was doing its job. You can see how worn away that was. You can also see in the corner the water damage to the sheathing, and so I'm going to have to replace some of that. There was just OSB up before, but I think plywood's going to be better. So I held up a board to create a straight line for myself, and then I marked the height of my replacement piece of plywood, made sure that was level, drew a line, and then I'm going to use an oscillating multi-tool to cut that out. I love this little tool. They're so helpful. This video is sponsored by WorkPro Tools. Throughout this project, you'll see me use WorkPro tools because of their ingenuity and power. My favorite has been the 5-in-1 workbench. You can adjust the height and transform it to do so many things. I've used it the most as a scaffolding to work more safely when renovating. The wheels and casters allow it to transform to a dolly or a creeper for mechanic work. I've used it this way as a rolling platform to move things around with ease. It can become a workbench top with storage for your tools and helpful measurements handy. Add the included rails and the workbench even becomes a sliding miter saw stand. And if you're wiser than me and have your miter saw hooked into a shop vac, there's a whole power strip right on the side. Check out WorkPro Tools by clicking on the link in the description of this video, and for a limited time, get 15% off this versatile workbench with my discount code. So with that piece of OSB off, I could inspect the framing on the wall, and thankfully when I popped this off, the framing was still in decent shape. There wasn't a ton of rot, at least it wasn't compromised. So I just had to get rid of the water damaged OSB, and I'm going to attach my new piece of plywood to patch the area right to the old framing that was there. You can see the insulation's missing from when the mold remediation company got rid of it. I will be replacing the insulation from the inside so that I can properly install the vapor barrier and then drywall over it. So I just attached that piece of plywood with some long screws right into the wall studs. And my wall is 2x6, so I used plenty long screws, and this is gonna hold for a very long time. Now, I know this part wasn't necessary, but I did decide to caulk the seam where the two pieces of plywood met. I don't know why, I was just being extra, but now it's more airtight. So now I'm going to move on to putting on the vapor barrier. First, I put waterproof flashing tape along the window flange to prevent any water from leaking around the window. Now the tape said to put it underneath all of the house wrap, but the house wrap said to seal all of the seams with the tape as well. So I ended up putting it under and over. Hopefully it's not overkill. Well, I got started putting the house wrap underneath the tar paper because I'm going to try and make this repair kind of work with the materials that were already on the house a little bit. You want to make sure that every flap overlaps on top. So I'm getting the tar paper to overlap this house wrap. Ideally, I would have started from the bottom. I realized my mistake after I already had too many staples into this. I am using a stapler with galvanized steel staples, and I'm stapling the house wrap every 12 inches or so right into the sheathing. Now the second piece of house wrap, remember to put the overlap on top so that if water does get behind the siding, it just flows right down and it doesn't get trapped behind. Horizontal seams are overlapped by at least 6 inches, and I'm doing plenty more than that here. This clip is so satisfying watching all of the house wrap flatten out and get stapled down. So I just want to invite you now to follow me on TikTok or Instagram if you don't already. I share all of these projects in real time, in stories, and in short format videos that are fun to watch. The links are in the description. When trimming the house wrap, I just left 2 inches beyond where the foundation meets the sheathing to protect that from water as well. The last step to protect my home before I replace the siding is to put that flashing tape on all of the vertical seams, and then this house wrap suggests that I also put it across horizontal seams, just not at the bottom. So basically, if water did get trapped behind it, it would come down the whole wall and seep out the bottom. Other people recommend that you don't tape the horizontal seams, but I guess that's just up to choice. I did salvage enough of the siding that I could replace most of what was there. It didn't crack. I was careful to take it off, so now I just get to slide it back underneath the previous lap and then nail it in. The nails that I'm using are the hot dipped galvanized steel. It's definitely better than what was in there, and I think these are going to withstand the elements much better. I don't have a framing nailer, so I'm just doing this by hand with my Work Pro hammer. I was able to reuse most of the cedar siding that was there, but the bottom two were so rotted and in poor condition that I had to buy 2 new 10-foot cedar boards. I think I paid $40 a piece for them. So I'm glad I was able to reuse what I could. The next day I came in and did some caulking on all of the open seams. A lot of them were pretty large, so I actually ended up putting in some backer rod to hold my caulking in place. I used a heavy-duty exterior caulk, and I'm actually going to have so much of this to do because the long-term plan here this summer is to repaint. So I have to fill in all the imperfections, and I'm going to also be using an exterior Bondo wood putty product to fill in holes that are in almost every piece of cedar siding. Now that we have the mold out of the house and the rotted materials replaced with new, it's time to address the cause of the water issue in the first place. We're going to be working on drainage, and we're going to be installing gutters. The next project I have coming up is building a retaining wall. So stay tuned to see that, and subscribe to Welcome to the Woods if you aren't already.